The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the 4th chapter of the Holy Gospel according to Mark. On that day, as evening drew on, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us cross over to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took Jesus with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. A violent squall came up, and waves were breaking over the boat, so that it was already filling up. Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. They woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Quiet, be still." The wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you terrified? Do you not yet have faith?" They were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this whom even the wind and sea obey?" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
One news commentator said, "We live in an age of anxiety." Anxiety. And we need only look around, see the news lately, both local, national, and worldwide, and we'll see, because of our mass communication and quickly way of getting news across the waves, we're filled sometimes with anxiety and fear. Angere, which is the Latin word anxious comes from, means to choke. And anxiety can indeed choke us. 50 years ago this month, I was in a car accident. I still remember it like yesterday. I was a teenager home for the summer from the seminary. A friend of mine, an elderly gentleman by the name of Lee, wanted to go to an evening, nighttime baseball game. So he asked me to drive his car, and my two brothers, Dave and Ken, decided we'll come along. So they sat in the back seat. By the time the game was over, there was a heavy cloud in the sky, and it was very dark. If there was a moon, we didn't see it. And as we were 20 miles from home and going down a very desolate highway, there was a car poking along ahead of us. Being a brash teenager, we can get around that car. And so we did. As I passed and was just moving into the lane, back into the right lane, I saw a car parked in the middle of the highway with its lights off. Too late. Head-on collision. The car rolled, I don't know how many feet, but certainly about 2 or 3 times, they think. Miraculously, my two brothers and I survived, lots of bruises, but Lee died. We found out later that the driver of the other car was inebriated, was drunk, had simply pulled to a stop and turned out his lights and passed out. I look back on it, and I was indeed paralyzed from that point on with fear. I had all the classic symptoms. The pattern of fear is that it undermined my ability for some time to work, to love, and to play. It also crippled me as far as being transformed and moving on with my life. I questioned whether I could ever survive any scare again. It was a couple years before I could drive at night again, because I could only see the headlights coming towards me, coming at me. I also reran it in my mind over and over again. Feelings of guilt, maybe of poor judgment, questioning myself. We can be paralyzed by fear. That's what comes to mind today when I hear about these disciples in a boat. They were not only paralyzed by fear, but they thought they were perishing. The boat was in a squall and it was filling with water. They were thinking Jesus didn't care. He's asleep on the cushion in the stern of the boat. They had to go wake him, not trusting that Jesus was going to take care of them. And as he awoke, he immediately realized they were terrified, and he calmed the storm. Jesus has this wonderful power to get rid of the evil in our life. And then he turned to them and kind of wagged his finger. Why were you afraid? Why were you afraid? Do you still not have faith? After all the things you've seen as you've been walking with me on my mission from the Father, do you still not have faith? Certainly everyone can think of a time in our life when we had that kind of fear and anxiety, that boogeyman in the basement kind of thing. Paralyzed, crippled, questioning ourselves about survival. It's important that we realize we turn to the Lord alone, who can redeem us from this mess with love and mercy and grace. So we ask the Lord today, please give us bold courage to move forward. We celebrate today as well, prayerfully, our dads, who were reminded at our baptism, be the best of teachers in the ways of faith. Be there for your children, so that the pattern of fear doesn't grip them. It's a tough job, but filled with grace. Dads have done it from generation to generation. They've affirmed that Jesus Christ is the Lord of the family. They've affirmed that they want Jesus Christ to be the rock in their home. So the good dads go about loving their wives, loving their children, instructing their children by word and example, providing for the family and protecting the family, following St. Joseph as a model. That virtue builds. And so hopefully many of us can reflect on our dads and granddads who have truly given us the ability to be in sometimes that rocky boat and not to lose faith, to acknowledge Jesus Christ is in the boat with us. And all we have to do is call out to the Lord, and he will say, peace, be still, be still. Today we recognize that we are on a Sea of Galilee. We're on our journey to get to the other side. May we recognize that faith impels us to turn to the Lord and to recognize the Lord is holding us to a different standard. As Pope Francis says, faith gives us the certainty to know that God's taking care of us. Faith also tells us we don't always know how and when and where. We just know at some point we will say, just like the disciples today after the wind and the storms and the sea is calmed, we will say, "Who is this whom even the wind and sea obey?"